Hello, I am Enrique Barra, and in this video we are going to see component properties and methods. In the first place, just remember how components are in React. They are just a function or an ESS class that receives a prop, data, and will return what needs to be rendered in the user interface. This is just one example or another example as a class or as a function. But what properties and methods do these components have? Well, in the first place, they have instance properties, class properties, then lifecycle methods, and other APIs. And for example, and of course, any other method defined by us. In this video, we will see all of them except for the lifecycle methods that we will see in another video. This is just one example of one React component that is a cell component that has a constructor that receives the props and calls the super to pass the props, that is React component, and has three methods: the compulsory render method, a component did mount that belongs to the lifecycle, and a method that we have defined with a special functionality, for example. So this is how our component will grow. Okay, in the first place, it only has a render, but as it grows and we add functionality, we will add more methods defined by us, or lifecycle methods, or API methods. Well, props. Props are very, very, very important in React. They are an instance property. As I told you, here, as a class or as a function, every React component has props, properties, that are the attributes that they received from their parents. Okay, this way the component can be customized. So the component will render different things and will do different things depending on the props that they received. Okay, remember that props are read-only and mutable, okay, and they are just a JavaScript object. They can be a string, a number, or a very complex object. Okay, and the state is almost the opposite. It's also an instance property, it is mutable, is a JavaScript object, but is additional information about the component that he or she or it wants to has between different renders. Okay, so the props are immutable, they should not be mutated, and the state should be mutated. That's why it is there. So it's mutable, although it must be mutated with a method that is called setState, not directly, because this way, with this method, a re-render, in fact, will be fired. Default props and display name. Well, default props and display name are class properties. Display name is not very used, it's just for debugging messages, and default props is an object that contains the props by default of this class. It is called one and caged when the class is created. setState. setState is a method to call to modify the state. Okay, in fact, it enqueues the changes to the component state because it can have changes from many places, and it is an asynchronous function. It receives an updater, that is a function with this signature, and a callback. In fact, it is usually like this: this.setState with a function to update the state. Okay, so this way you can access the previous state and the props. A more simpler look, setState will only receive the new state, the state change. Okay, setState can receive as a JavaScript object this state change, but remember, it will be asynchronous, so you can't access the previous state inside this state change object. For example, this is right and this is wrong, because as it is asynchronous, when this is performed or this is done by React, state can be any other object. Right? Force update. This is a method that exists but should be avoided. It will call a re-render, a force re-render, because when you do a setState, React re-renders the application very efficiently based on the virtual DOM and etc. But if your component depends on other data that is not on the state, this is not a very good idea. You can call a re-render directly with this method, force update, but remember, try to avoid this use. Finally, component did catch has this signature. It's just like a catch block, traditional try catch block, but for components, to create a error boundary. Error boundaries do catch errors in rendering, in the lifecycle methods, and in the constructors of the component or the whole tree below them, all their children. But don't catch errors, of course, on event handlers or asynchronous code. In those cases, we have to use try catch. How do we use it? Many times we will create a error boundary component that will render my component, my whole app. This error boundary just has a component did catch with a set state with error that will log, of course, the error in a database or wherever service, and in the render, if we have error, we render something went wrong, and if not, we will render our children, in this case, my widget. So we have a special component that we can use as many times as we want, or just one time wrapping the whole app, and it is used like this, as a component with a child, in this case called my widget. It has a component did catch, that is a method, a special method that I already told you. What does it do? It calls set state with hash error to true, and if we have an error in the render method, we render something went wrong. Okay, so thank you for getting here, and see you in the next video.